I've seen what love looks like, I've seen its beauty when it's alive.
All right, here we are, keyframe number 3. Now this is where the actual story starts. Up until now, I've introduced you to the main characters, last man on Earth, and the wife that he's lost. But I haven't really told you much about the world. You know, everyone's gone. You don't know necessarily why. So this is where I let you into what's happened. And, you know, it's a setup to try and ask you for your attention enough to give you this scene, this mystery, this answer to some of what happened that hopefully is intriguing enough that you want to read the whole rest of the story to see what our main character is going to do about it. And in drawing this, I have my sketch. I know what the beat is about. This is the night he came home after a long evening's work, driving his hover taxi, and sees a big UFO in the sky. And then tries to tell people about it. Nobody believes him. It's hard. Nobody believes you, right? You can doubt your own sanity and wonder if it really happened. So I wanted it to happen in a way that is so clear. You know, it's not a sort of bright light in the sky. It's a thing. It's a real thing. And I've had a lot of strange experiences in my life. So I can identify with that. I know what that feels like. It literally stops you in your tracks when you see something that you can't explain. And a lot of the time, you're the only one to see it. So people do doubt you. For this particular moment, because I was looking around for something that I had a very personal connection with, this connects with the story of what happened to me when I was coming back from art school in Scotland to visit my parents in San Francisco. I was getting ready to go to bed one night. I think I'm in my early 20s. And just as I'm about to get into bed, my parents call out from the back room, kids, get in here. So ran into the back room along with my 2 sisters. And my dad is in the bed, and my mom is up at the curtains, just about to close them, and she's frozen at the window. And I said, what happened? And my mom went, well, we were just about to go to sleep when suddenly there was this little light in the sky, and then it filled our windows, this bright light beaming in. And my mom sees a lot of strange things. So I was like, yeah, right, Mom, exactly what happened. And I turn and look at my dad in the bed, and he goes even paler than he is already and says, oh my God. And he's looking out the window. So I turn and I look out the window, almost exactly as Pig is doing right here. And up in the sky is a UFO. And it's not a bright light. And it's not a foggy day. And it's not even that far up in the sky. It's right about where he's looking. And it looked very depressingly like a UFO. You know, it was saucer-shaped. It had lights going around it. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it's coming right towards us. So I quickly put my clothes back on and ran outside into the open-air mall that was next door. And yeah, sure enough, this UFO comes flying in straight overhead. There were about 100 people there. It was a nice evening. Everybody was outside. And we all look up, see this crazy UFO flying by. It was so much like the UFOs in Close Encounters, and so depressingly like a UFO that, you knew it had to be human or maybe a stunt for a movie or something. And then I did what I gave to Pig here. I ran back in and called the police, and then I called the newspapers. And they both thought it was hilarious and totally didn't take it seriously. And I thought, ha ha, you wait. But in the morning, this, as was Pig, there's no response now. Not everyone in the world disappeared as a consequence, but yeah, police had no record of it. Nothing in the newspapers. But it didn't matter, you know? I'd seen this thing in the sky. It was crystal clear what it looked like and what you could call it. It doesn't mean I got proof that things come from other planets. No, I had no idea what it was or where it came from. But yeah, I've never forgotten it. So I thought, okay, well, let's give that to my character. Now, the UFO I'm designing here is not exactly like the one I saw. The one I saw was a lot more depressingly like a UFO. And for this story, I wanted something a little different. You'll see why later. There's actually a connection with some of the things in Pig's laboratory that I wanted to use later. But I kind of like the idea of it being a big torus, you know, some sort of flying donut in the air. And I wanted it to be, you know, pretty tangible. A lot of details. You can see the rust and the wear and tear on it as it's flown throughout the universe. I think if I wanted to imply that it's not human, there would be pieces of it, things on it, that you wouldn't know what their function was. They would definitely look functional, but those little brown plates and so on, they're not really windows. And the little metal plate that I'm painting at the top, I mean, I don't really even know what that is. But when I'm inventing something like this, I try to, as I was with the characters, just dream it down, put things that feel right, but I may not know why they are right. And often look for analogous shapes too. I could pull out reference for insects. I could study old abandoned generators. I could look at anything that has interesting multiple layers and plates and things like that. Insects, electron microscope photographs of microscopic life are always really great. Sometimes though, I'll do something as taking a kneaded eraser and I'll just pull it and bend it and twist it and put it into a shape. You'll get shapes there that are formed because of the pulling and the twisting, but they're like nothing you could ever find anywhere else because they're unique to the moment that you pulled them and twisted them. So at any rate, that gave me the beginnings of a really fun UFO, and certainly good enough for the keyframe, right? I just want you to look at it, sense that there's some intelligence or some history or technology behind it, but not quite understand it. And I wanted it to fill the sky. I mean, it's huge, big old thing. Now, notice that I knew Pig. I knew what he would be doing, right? Because I know that reaction from having felt that myself. And then I knew where I wanted the UFO. It's really simple. He's pointing up in the sky. I followed his finger and put it up at the top there. And I wanted there to be that kind of connection to them before I put the rest of the city in there. Because the city is actually going to be there to focus your eye back on the two of them. So that's the base requirement before I actually start drawing the town. And I've told you, and remember, I haven't figured all this out, at least not at this stage. I've told you that everyone in the world is going to disappear. And he thinks this UFO took everybody, including his wife. So what does that mean that the world looks like now? And now when I was writing the story and doing these beats, I didn't really figure that one out. I mean, obviously, if nobody's left to maintain the world's going to run down pretty quickly. Power's going to run out within a short space of time. Things that need to be repaired are going to fall into disrepair. Nature is going to come in and take over the place. But the thing is, I've seen that. I've seen it a lot. It would actually be distracting to my story to see that again because it wouldn't make me curious. It wouldn't make me feel that sense of wonder and awe of actually being in a strange situation like this. So here's where I begin to figure out what that, it's not even a post-apocalyptic, it's just a post-abduction world would look like. And the one thing I know is that I don't want it to be this crumbling world falling apart. There will be indications that things aren't maybe working like they had before, but it's not falling apart. And also, as you'll see later in the story, there's still power. At least he still has power. When I'm doing these shapes, as I said before, I'm not really worried about thinking through the world. All I want to do is help that finger point up to that UFO and have the things that the UFO's kind of leading to, other things that are pointing there. Also, you can slide down and take the eye away from that. So I want the eye to be able to escape down these other shapes, but they all lead back to Pig. And of course, then Pig just, his finger throws you back up to the UFO. So I'm doing these, and I'm also, believe it or not, I want this to be a small town that grew up a bit, but it's not New York, right? It's not some megalopolis. It's not Los Angeles. It's a town that maybe grew up as a seaside town. Maybe it was a port. It was a shipbuilding town, and then fell into some other profession when that dried up a little bit, or maybe it still has that industry, but it's growing others. In those kind of towns, I actually grew up in one up here in Victoria, BC. And one of the things that raises the technology level is when they get transport in there, and it's a pretty futuristic looking transport. So we've always had trains here, and ferries that would bring you to and from the island. And we've had catamaran ferries, which was starting to get really fancy. Still have those. So I thought, okay, well, then let's let there be some fun transport. There'll be bridges, and there'll be rail lines that go zooming up through the air. And I've already said he drives a hover taxi. Just so you know, it's not it's not an Uber, or it's not a thing of today. It's something a little more in the future. So unfortunately, we don't have hovering cars yet. So here I am, slipping either a hover train or a hover car in there to kind of connect the story moment that's what he does and drives at night. Always, from the time I lived in my little town to the time it was not quite so little anymore, we've had these giant billboard signs everywhere. And that just seemed to be, a little piece of history of the place, right? Illustration is great because it actually captures the history of a moment. It talks about the style, the illustration style, the things that matter to people of the time when that illustration was done, usually. So, whatever I put on those billboards when I eventually design the world and figure it out, whatever they're talking about can hint at things that are coming but maybe not here yet, or things that people are concerned about. I don't know. I haven't even figured out how far in the future this would be. I mean, it could be an alternative today, actually. But the signs might actually hint at things like global warming 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But again, for this keyframe, that's not important. All that's important is I have a feeling of how big the town is, what kind of buildings there are, what part of town Pig and his wife might live in. So I'm putting them actually in the city, letting the buildings be big. And of course, drawing the kind of buildings I would want to have in a city. So they've got gargoyles up there of some kind projecting from the edge of the building. I always love it whether it's because the building was built back in a different era that had those things, or it's some sort of mock Gothic architectural style that came back in. You can usually check when you see a city. You can see the styles, the reigning styles, and they define a period of time for that particular town. So I'm going to say that there's a period of time here where a kind of future Gothic thing came into the town. Anyway, that's it for Keyframe number 3. We've established the world without having to go into it too much, and got the moment where Pig sees his UFO.